Republican Party leaders in Illinois frustrated by low voter turnout in the primary election.
1 in 6 that I went to even come out and vote is just blows me away that we can't get people to vote.
Takeaways from the primary coming up on WGLT's Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. Also on today's show, a town council member isn't sure Uptown Normal should ban new smoke shops.
What problem are you trying to solve is a question that is worth asking.
Plus, hear the latest Bloomington Black History Essay Contest winner, recognizing a poet, a soldier, and an abolitionist author.
Imagine being dragged onto a smelly, poisonous ship, or being forced to join the army at such a young age.
Those stories follow a Bloomington Normal News update just ahead. This is Sound Ideas on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.
Support for WGLT comes from Bloomington Normal Audiology. Hear My Story continues with local patients Ralph and Carol Weisheit.
Why do people wait? We don't wait when we can't see. We get glasses. So why don't you get a hearing aid? Because, you miss out on so much.
Ralph and Carol's full story can be found at bnaudiology.com.
From the campus of Illinois State University in Normal, this is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. I'm John Norton. The stage is now set for the general election in Illinois this November. It's been called one of the most consequential elections in American history. Yesterday's primary election had a different vibe, at least among voters. Just 17% of McLean County's registered voters cast ballots. There weren't many races, though, especially on the Democratic side. For the races that voters did decide, WGLT's Eric Stock offers this recap.
We start with what's expected to be a congressional race that will attract national interest in November. Republican Joe McGraw easily topped Scott Crowell in the 17th Congressional District Republican primary. McGraw is a retired judge from the Rockford area. Establishment Republicans backed McGraw, and McGraw far outraised Crowell, who's a farmer and former union leader. McGraw will face incumbent Democratic Congressman Eric Sorensen in November. Sorensen is a former TV meteorologist from the Quad Cities. Sorensen has accumulated a war chest of more than $1.7 million. The 17th district includes parts of Bloomington Normal, Peoria, the Quad Cities, Canton, Galesburg, Macomb, and Rockford. Sabato's Crystal Ball and the Cook Political Report currently rate this race as lean Democratic. Republicans currently hold a narrow House majority of 219 to 213. A Democrats' command in the state legislature is much wider, and that's not expected to change based on these primary election results. In the heavily Republican district that stretches from Bloomington to south of Decatur, Regan Deering of Decatur easily defeated Chuck Erickson of Bloomington in an Illinois House primary. Deering is a former small business owner and one-time congressional candidate. She says she wants to help bring prosperity for everyone in the 88th district.
When we have families that are struggling every day, that's, not a partisan issue. So I'm just going to continue to show up for the people and talk about what's really plaguing, everyday Illinoisans and working for good policy.
Republican Dan Calkins did not seek re-election for the seat and gave his endorsement to Deering. Deering says that was a big help in this race. For his part, Chuck Erickson, a veteran McLean County board member, he says money also played a big factor in this race.
I hope that elections are not decided by the size of someone's bank account, because if that's all we're going to do to decide elections, everybody should just turn in a balance sheet and we can just call the race at that point.
Deering has no Democratic opponent in November. Erickson's term on the county board ends this year. He says he hasn't ruled out another campaign in the future. Erickson is leaving a county board that saw its own shakeup. George Wendt, a 14-year county board member and fiscal conservative, lost in the Republican primary to farmer Brian Loeffler. Another newcomer, Mike O'Neill, defeated the county Republican Party chair Dennis Grundler in another county board race. Republican voters did maintain the status quo in the race for county circuit clerk, the record keeper for McLean County's court system. Don Everhart is headed for a fifth term after easily defeating one of his former employees, Jason Daisy. Everhart says one of his top priorities in the next term will be the launch of the county's new case management system, expected in early 2025.
I'm grateful to the voters, and my campaign team, my friends, and all that supported me. I'm very thankful.
You can see all of the election results at WGLT.org. I'm Eric Stock.
And I'm John Norton. The head of the McLean County Republican Party says he was surprised and disappointed by the primary election results. For one, Dennis Grundler of Downs was disappointed by the 17% voter turnout in McLean County. Democrats had no contested races on the primary ballot. Grundler also lost in his bid for McLean County Board to a political newcomer, Mike O'Neill. Grundler questioned O'Neill's conservative credentials, but says O'Neill heavily outspent him. He tells WGLT's Eric Stock what he thinks the results mean for the future of the Republican Party in McLean County.
I think there's a disconnect between the people on the county board and what the county Republicans are wanting to do as a whole. And I guess that's why you get sometimes 3 of the Republicans voting with the Democrats. And that's why I think we're in some of the situations we're in on the county board.
While you question his conservative bona fides, George Wendt apparently losing in District 3, probably the most strident conservative the county board has had in a really long time, to a relative political newcomer. What are your takeaways from that as putting your party chair hat on?
Once again, I don't know if it was someone's looking for a change because George voted conservative. And once again, it could have just been we were way outspent on money. And, I tell you what, I went out to 1,800 houses, and to have, 1 in 6 that I went to even come out and vote is just blows me away that we can't get people to vote.
Do you hear the concern from some of the public that they feel that county politics, local politics in general, has become increasingly partisan and less productive as a result?
Oh, yeah, I hear that. I've been trying to fix that for the years that I've been with them, but the problem is that it seems like the two sides of the party are so disconnected that you have people with conservative values, and then you have people with maybe not conservative values with raising taxes and things like that. And if you can't get together, that's just, I guess, that's why we're a 10-10 board now instead of a 16-4.
Can you work with the board in any way to broker the kind of change you want to see, or is it just bound to be a 10-10 split?
Well, I'm hoping we can pick up a couple seats. Looks like the couple newcomers have got a lot of money, so maybe... but that's not really picking up seats. That's taking over places of other Republicans. So, like I said, I'm going to wish them the best of luck. I'm going to get behind them, and hopefully they are conservative, like the mailers and the texts and all the things, were said, and all the signs said they were conservative. So let's hope they are.
What do you make of the House 88th District race with Reagan Deering winning pretty decisively over Chuck Erickson from Bloomington?
I think on the case of that, I think both of them were conservative. At least that's what they're said. I don't know Reagan as well, other than I've talked with her several times. I'm hoping that she is true conservative like she said she is. And we're going to get behind her because we need to win all the seats we can win or keep a hold of, because the Democrats have a supermajority in the state, and we're not going to change anything if we don't. So we got to stop this fighting. We got to get behind the people that win. And we got to drive forward, and then hold them to what they say they're going to do.
What's realistic for the GOP statewide, given that there are so few competitive districts anymore?
It's what it's going to take. It's going to take enough people hurting enough to actually come out and vote. If you get a thing like today where you have 60,000 registered voters and you get 4,000 to come out and vote, I mean, that's just a crying shame that people don't care enough or maybe believe in the system enough that they can change it to actually come out and vote, because that's what happens.
And how do you think national politics, the presidential race, will impact McLean County voting in November, as the party last time around went to the Democratic nominee for the first time in a really long time? How could that potentially impact the down ballot races such as county board?
It definitely can affect it. Once again, we have to get behind every one of our nominees, and we have to push for them to win and try to pick up a seat or two, and hopefully we don't lose any seats. How does the federal affect it? I don't know if it does. If you're going to tell me that they're not coming out and vote because Trump's at the top of the ballot, then those people don't care anyway. They can come out and not vote for Trump and vote for everybody else down ballot. So if they're going to use that as an excuse, I'm calling them out on that.
But people do tend to do that, though.
Once again, a no vote is a vote.
That was McLean County Republican Party Chair Dennis Grundler speaking with WGLT's Eric Stock. The primary election results in McLean County also show President Biden got a larger share of the Democratic vote than Donald Trump did of the Republican vote. Biden received 88% support among Democrats. Trump received 76% among Republicans. Trump got a lower percentage in the city of Bloomington. Several GOP contenders who have dropped out of the race are still on the ballot. The general election will be November 5th, and you can see all of our election coverage right now at WGLT.org.
While COVID-19 restrictions may be a thing of the past, many people still deal with the threat of the disease every day. The cost of taking COVID precautions into your own hands, next time on Marketplace.
Listen to Marketplace beginning at 5:30 this afternoon on WGLT, sponsored by SEFCU.
Fame is a challenge for the singer-songwriter known as Sir.
I was depressed, and my thing was, instead of talking about it with anyone, I would just self-medicate.
Last night was a hell of a night. Sir opens up about addiction, relationships, and his new album, Heavy. Tomorrow on Morning Edition from NPR News. This is Steve Inskeep. Listen to Morning Edition weekdays from 4 to 9 a.m. on WGLT.
This is Sound Ideas on WGLT. I'm John Norton. Connect Transit has had to put the brakes on its electric buses because a battery supplier went belly up, and it has forced the transit agency to reduce service. More tomorrow on Sound Ideas. Town of Normal Council member Scott Preston recently voted against starting a process that could result in a ban on new tobacco and vape shops in Uptown. The issue now lies with the Planning Commission, which will hold hearings and send some sort of recommendation back to the council. In this interview with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker, Preston talks about why he voted as he did.
It's something that I didn't see as necessary, and there was a question that I had at the time about its impact on existing or potential businesses that have already started, initiated their work, if they would be impacted by this or not. At the core of any concern that would have driven this issue in the first place, I think there are other ways to look at that issue and resolve it other than doing this. Whatever recommendation ends up coming out of Planning Commission, I'm going into that conversation when it comes back to council with an open mind.
But generally, are you a free marketeer, or is there merit to considering a proper mix of businesses in Uptown, or are there moral objections to smoke and vape shops?
Personally, I don't have any moral objections to it. I think that there is a balance with creating a space. I mean, Uptown Normal certainly is a unique geographical area of Normal. We have zoned it that way as a result. There are stipulations that apply in Uptown that aren't the same as the surrounding neighborhoods and the rest of Normal, and that is with intention, and that's how you create a great space like Uptown has been. But balancing that with not wanting to pick winners and losers and not exclude businesses merely for the lawful, legitimate business that they are in. And thus their customer base too, many of whom are residents of the town of Normal. So in general, I'm not in favor of limiting, respectable, well-run, operated businesses from specific parts of Normal. But, in some cases it's a balance, and, what problem are you trying to solve is a question that is worth asking. And then once you get to there, what's the best way to address it that makes the most sense for the most people?
So do you think the number of smoke shops is out of balance with the rest of the business mix in Uptown?
Personally, I don't have a concern with that. That's not something that has been on my radar, nor is it something that I've heard a lot about currently.
So that would suggest that you would vote against a zoning amendment if it were to come back to you?
More likely than not, yeah. Now, I do go into it with an open mind. Like I said, it's not an issue that I have, not an issue that I've been hearing a lot about and hearing a lot of passionate debate about either way.
Bloomington City Manager Tim Gleason recently raised the idea that a portion of the municipal sales tax money that Bloomington and Normal send to the county for mental health services could be used to address the homeless issue, because often homelessness is accompanied by mental health issues. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the McLean County Regional Planning Commission did this big regional housing study, and there were a number of recommendations in it, and obviously it talked about a number of issues. One of which, of course, being homelessness, and it's an issue that obviously our community and every community has been looking to try and effectively work with. The town and the city do give sales tax dollars to the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council with the county, and I believe that that's what Mr. Gleason was recommending or throwing out there as a potential option, as there is homelessness within a specific program that's called FUSE within the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council work that addresses, one of many components to that FUSE program is homelessness. It is, a smaller issue in the larger spectrum of Behavioral Health Coordinating Council work, but it is within there, and it's something that we'll take a look at in the town, but the conversations have not progressed in a way to where there's a good feel for whether there's an opportunity for action or not with that, and what the best way forward is on the larger issue of how we help that part of our community.
County Board Chairman Catherine Metzger has temporarily suspended meetings of the Coordinating Council. What do you think needs to happen in the community-wide conversation before those resume, and before Bloomington and Normal municipalities decide what metrics ought to be used to determine the effectiveness of that program?
Yeah, so the issues that are being discussed are community issues, and while there may be more, prevalent or maybe addressed in a greater extent in one municipality over another or in the county, by and large, these are community issues, and having a community conversation about it with the city, with the town, with the county, and other many other stakeholders, ultimately, one would hope and think, is the most effective way to look at how we can address these community concerns, and how we can best work together to be as efficient and effective as possible in trying to work with a portion of our community that needs the assistance and needs some involvement from their government.
Do you believe that the current ways of determining effectiveness that the county is using are adequate?
I think it's something worth looking at. I think that in a lot of ways the situations and needs can evolve, and I think having a community conversation and looking at it is good for all of us and ultimately for the people who we serve.
That's Normal Town Council member Scott Preston. This week he's Mayor Pro Tem since Mayor Chris Coos and Council member Kevin McCarthy are out of town. Preston spoke with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker. This is Sound Ideas, WGLT's news magazine. I'm John Norton. The winners of this year's City of Bloomington Black History Essay Contest include Aliyah Mohapatra, a 7th grader at Chittix Junior High School. Let's hear Aliyah read her essay, which recognizes a poet, a soldier, and an abolitionist author.
Imagine being dragged onto a smelly, poisonous ship, or being forced to join the army at such a young age, or even having to bring up yourself on your own because your parents abandoned you. These are some of the harsh realities that some unknown yet remarkable people had to go through. Phyllis Wheatley, one remarkable poet, was dragged onto a ship against her will at the age of 7, and she had to bring herself up to standard on her own with very minor help from her enslaver. When Phyllis's owner first bought her, she took pity on her, so she bought Phyllis for a few pounds and made her a Christian lady's maid. Even though Phyllis knew that she was being quote-unquote owned, Mrs. Wheatley took Phyllis in like her own daughter. She taught her Latin, Greek, and even taught Phyllis how to read the Bible. When Mrs. Wheatley passed away, Phyllis was technically free, but she didn't know how to be free, so she leaned on the Wheatleys again for more help. After Mrs. Wheatley passed, there seemed to be a new interest fired up inside of her, and that was her new passion for poetry. But there was a downside to that. Mr. Wheatley was a loyalist, or a supporter of the British. When she gave him some of her poems to read, he refused to read them, but she published them either way against his will. During the Revolutionary War, she wrote some poems that were trash-talking King George III. These poems are so remarkable that they came into the recognition of George Washington himself, and he invited her to the military base to recite some poems to the army that Phyllis has written all by herself. These poems are so intriguing that it gave the military the motivation to keep fighting and never give up. She truly is a remarkable woman. Peter Salem, not a very known guy, is he? He was what people would call a sharpshooter, as he had such accurate shots being fired during the war. He was one of the many Minutemen during the Battle of Bunker Hill. He fired the most accurate shots in the battle, and he was a hero during the Battle of Lexington and Concord. He was one of the many militia who looked like they had no talent on the battlefield. He became one of the many Minutemen at age 25, fighting in the battle when he was most needed, and eventually became one of the most impressive warriors by the time that the Battle of Bunker Hill came around. After Bunker Hill, he started training with George Washington's troops. For the Battle of Saratoga, as he also fought there, he fought in the 6th Regiment under George Washington's command. He was a very well-known soldier and got a lot of respect while he was fighting in the army. Frederick Douglass was an American writer, but on the other hand was someone who had a very poor upbringing. He was born in Maryland to an enslaved mother. Not much is known about his early life, but what we do know is that he chose his last name Douglas for a poem. We don't exactly know the reason why, but some websites do claim that he chose the last name for him and his wife by the suggestion of a friend. He also married the woman who helped set him free. He started writing an autobiography before he met Abraham Lincoln to help him write a legal document that helped slaves get their place in society. As a former slave, he got the opportunity to visit Abraham and Mary Lincoln in Washington, D.C., and help Lincoln write and deliver the Emancipation Proclamation. He escaped from slavery successfully, and he contributed in writing such an amazing document to help abolish it as well. There were many more warriors that we could name, possibly, but these are the main, most unrecognized heroes out there who have done so many things to help this country.
That's Aliyah Mohapatra. She's the second place winner in the middle school division of this year's City of Bloomington Black History Essay Contest. Listen all this week during Sound Ideas, and you will hear the students reading their essays. WGLT's Charlie Schlenker produced this reading. And thanks for choosing Sound Ideas today. WGLT's news magazine is made possible in part by Bloomington Normal Audiology. I'm John Norton. Story help from WGLT's Eric Stock and Charlie Schlenker. Ryan Toohey edits the show. You can find all of our Sound Ideas interviews and stories at WGLT.org, and you can subscribe to Sound Ideas on the NPR app and wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love to know what you think of Sound Ideas. You can make a comment on our Facebook page. We're WGLT FM. At WGLT News is our handle on Instagram and Threads. This is 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.